really excited about today's program. Branding and benefits. Those two things, I don't know that they always go together. But for me, unraveling the complexity of benefits is something that I really get into. And branding is something that I could talk about all day. In fact, I think I do talk about branding all day. But a great program today. Real excited about it. HNIU, our goal at HNIU, drive change through education. So every event we have, we're hoping to bring more education to you, our clients, our friends. But today, as I look around the room, there's a lot of brain power in the room. So today, executive order, I've changed our tagline, part of the branding theme, from HNIU, driving change through education. Today, it's driving change through a new perspective. And we've got just the resource today to put a new perspective on benefits and branding. So Harry's over here. We're going to get to him in a second. I'm kind of the warm-up band. Okay? He would be, give me a band, a great big band.
38 Special.
38 Special.
My dream has come true.
38 Special. So if he's the 38 Special, who would the warm-up band for 38 Special be?
Love Monkeys.
The Love Monkeys. Very good. Marty, you're always good for that. So I am the Love Monkeys today. I want to warm you up a little bit, get you going into our presentation. Harry came up today from Chicago. We just met. It was kind of like Harry meets Mike or Mike meets Harry today. And we're really going to have a good program today. So I have just three things that I'd like to talk a little bit about. First one being a new world. True or false, we're living in a new world, and there's this wave that we're riding. Why branding? And then what I refer to as the internal brand. What is an internal brand? So, are you riding this wave? Am I the only one that feels like everything's changed? How many of you feel like everything's been changed? So, this wave looks something like this. Pretty turbulent. Where are you? Top. Some days you feel like you're on the top. Oftentimes you feel like you're down below. But when we talk about this wave, what do you think I'm referring to when I say the wave? Give me an example of what's changing just off the chart.
Healthcare.
Healthcare. Perfect. What else? What else in business is just totally different? What's driving it?
The labor equation.
The labor equation. What else?
Technology.
Technology. Technology. Everyone have their phones on vibrate, right? Technology. So here are just some of the things that I look at. What's driving our business? What's changing our business? This wave that we're riding, you've got generation flux. It's not even one generation anymore. I don't know how many there are. Generation flux, we've got technology, the web, social media, transparency. All these things are changing the way we work. So we're moving away from, I think, this corporate age to the human age. Everyone here is a lot of HR professionals. Okay, we're moving away from corporate world to human age. And when we talk about the human age, there's nothing more complex, Steve, than a human being. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah.
You didn't know that. So I've got this thing about complexity. So this human age, if it's really the human age, right, it's creating more complexity. We talk about the labor equation, we talk about employee benefits and what have you. We have more and more complexity because we're dealing with humans. We have way more information than we know what to do with. We can't even absorb the information that we have. So there's this big gap. And this is one of my favorite quotes, which is, making the simple complex is commonplace. We're all pretty good at that. But making the complex simple, that takes creativity. And that's why we brought Harry in. That's exactly why we brought Harry in, because this is what we're after. We're trying to make the complex simple, but that's hard work. It takes a large amount of creativity, and again, that's what we're going to show you in a little bit. Well, if this human age is real, then isn't it the age of human resources? Is human resources just way higher up on the echelon than it ever has before? I believe it has. I have been known to not have been the biggest fan of HR in the past, traditional HR, believe it or not. But today, it is really important in this human age. So the question becomes with this wave is, are you using it to your advantage? Or is it working against you? Anyone have a feel for that? All that wave, you feel like it's working for you or against you? Yes. Some days for, some days against, right? So I've got this big idea. It goes around complexity, and that is for the next 90 minutes. And hopefully, as you drive home and on into the week, the month, the year, that we wage a war against complexity in our organizations. That we just fight it tooth and nail, and every time we see it, we try and eliminate it. So that's the big idea. Let's wage a war against it. So why is branding important when it comes into benefits? And I like to define branding this way. Everyone has a definition for a brand. It's kind of like a religion. But I define it this way. A brand is a person's gut feeling about your organization. Pretty simple. A brand is a person's gut feeling about your organization. So it's not so much what you say it is, right? You can't make your brand. And oftentimes I hear people, and I've done it myself, say, well, we named something, or we got a new logo. We branded it, right? Well, if it doesn't change your gut feeling, then you really haven't branded it. You may have marketed it, but you haven't branded it. So if it's not what you say it is, what is your brand? It's what they say. Okay? That's our job in this human age, is to really get them to say it and not us. So in a brand platform, and talking about internal brand, external brand, like I said, internal branding, many people call it employer branding, a lot of different names for it. I like to use internal and external, and the reason for that is I like to have one. I think it's just how you come at it. Your brand promise is the same whether you're looking at it from the outside in or the inside out. They are completely joined at the hip. Some organizations have internal communications departments. Some have internal and external communications, and actually they're going differently, different directions. I think it's really important that we are joined at the hip. What we're saying externally is matching up internally. So this brand thing happens, like a lot of other stuff, in real time, and with this wave, it's going at a much greater speed. So does anybody have a goal or have an internal brand goal? What about this one? Is there a better internal branded goal than this? To create a great place to work. Very simple. I've already spewed a lot of complexity. Try and bring it back to something simple. A great place to work would be a great internal brand goal. All right, so think about your internal branding, your HR, your benefits, communications. I'm going to work you through this little exercise. Okay? It starts with marketing. So if we were going to do marketing, we do something like this. We tell people about how great we are. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So usually we try to...
Are you speaking from personal experience?
Yes, yes. It doesn't work for me. There you go. So I resort to advertising. Because sometimes marketing doesn't quite get it done. I'm going to move on to advertising. And I'm better at advertising than marketing. And so now I'm going to hammer them. And say it over and over and over. So I'm going to send newsletters. I'm going to tell everybody my message. Okay? Sometimes that works. But if you're starting moving up the ladder, you get the PR. PR is when somebody else might say something about you, and then it sounds a little something like this. Is that better? No, Molly doesn't like this. It's better when someone else is talking about your organization than you bragging about it. So, branding. What is branding? Anyone want to take a crack at what this quote might sound like? You're full of it, yes. Authenticity. It cuts right through it. So your brand precedes you. It's not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. So that's the ultimate. Try to take brand to the simplest terms. Harry, did you follow this?
Oh, dude, I've got so many ideas now.
Okay. Good. So internally, I mean, I'm not going to get into this, but there's all kinds of touch points on how you create your brand from the date of hire to the exit interview and everything in between. I guess what we're looking for is how do we become very distinct and consistent? Distinct meaning different. What is it about your organization that's different? I'd really like to see something that we can lean into that differentiates you from somewhere else. You always hear it externally saying, how are we different, right? Do you take the same position internally to see what it is you do different? That's what you want to, I think, lift up in your communications internally. So that it's not just a whole bunch of stuff. It's just something that's unique and distinct about your organization. So, again, complexity, we have to have a test. And if you're messaging it to me, I want it to be interesting and relevant. If it interests me, informs me, and inspires me, then we've got something. If it doesn't, we're probably adding to complexity. So how do you eat this elephant? Well, this is why we've got Harry here. We really wanted to figure out, how do you go at this? How do you get this internal brand? Where do you start? So, from Jellyvision Labs in Chicago,
We'd like to be outside and running in.
Harry Gottlieb coming in to talk a little bit about a new perspective on interactive communications. Let's give a hand to Harry.
Is this 38 special? So it sounds like a number of very interesting challenges, and it feels like at least one of the threads is this happens to be commensurate with what I'm going to be talking about today, which is the challenge of engaging employees around benefits communications. I may be able to provide you with the key to making benefits engaging, benefits communication riveting in just a few minutes, and possibly make this a little bit shorter. Because there is, in fact, one simple guideline that can be used to really grab people's attention. This is a method that has been used in movies, it's been used in television, you see it in print ads, you see it in commercials. And I think that it is something that could be used, a technique that could be used to great effect in the benefit space. And that guideline is this: make it sexy. Now, how many of you feel like you could effectively deploy sex appeal in your benefits communication?
Maybe not quite that blatant.
Are you concerned? You're worried that it's probably you're worried about somebody in the C-suite not approving or something like that.
Yeah, for example.
Okay, if that doesn't work, then what about? It's another great one. Fear. How many of you feel like you could use scare tactics in your benefits communication? I mean, quite seriously, like, these are very, very powerful ways to get people's attention. But There are other approaches that you can use. There are other guidelines to make your benefits communication a lot more engaging. They just require a little more imagination, a little more nuance. But before we start talking about those, there's something that we have to acknowledge. What we need to acknowledge is this, that most all of us in this room have made a decision to dedicate some portion of our career to the selection and communication and administration of employee benefits. We are an unusual bunch. Very few people wake up in the morning thinking to themselves, oh God, today's the day I get to learn all about my health insurance options, right? We're in our own group. So if that's the case, we need to, if people aren't already interested, we have to make it interesting. So how do we make it interesting? So if you can't make it sexy and you can't make it scary, there happen to be two powerhouse approaches to engaging people that we can use. One of them is storytelling, and the other is humor. And I hope to demonstrate the use of these methods during this demonstration today. So our guideline here is have the courage to not be boring. Have the courage to not be boring. For example, most people aren't going to get up in front of their clients and talk about how they want to brand themselves as a lover. But everybody was paying attention, right? So it's great. Have the courage to not be boring. If you were in marketing, have any of you been in marketing, like been in the marketing side? Was that like sort of?
Kind of.
So kind of in marketing?
A little bit of
Right.
everything.
If you were in marketing, you already got this message that you need to have the courage to not be boring, because if you're reaching customers, you've got to do something to get their attention. But in HR, you may have gotten the message that whatever you do, make sure you don't offend anybody. And if that's the message you've got, then that may have paralyzed you so that you've avoided doing anything that's interesting or fun. And perhaps unconsciously adopted this idea, this like kind of weird idea, that all business communication somehow has to be serious. Because, when you're in a work scenario, people are serious. So let's look at some of these people. Here's a guy at work. So is she. So is he. And you are people at work. You are the recipients of business communication. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to never laugh at work? Anybody? Right, well, your employees that you're communicating, they're not really that much different than you. We're all human beings. We like go to funny movies. We like to be entertained, and there's nothing wrong with it. Let me tell you a story about something that happens at Jellyvision, not infrequently. So we've got this side of our business, which is like a digital agency, and so we do custom work. So people need some training materials created. They need marketing, and they come to us, and we put together a custom project for them. And so we write scripts, and the writer-director does a script review with the client. And during the script review, we'll be reading through the script, and we'll get to some part that's funny, and then everybody in the client starts to burst out laughing, and we're like, oh, God, that's, you guys, that's just great. It'd be so great if we could do something like that here at XYZ Corporation, but, there's going to just be some people who aren't going to get it. They might be a little put off by it. It's never anybody in the room. Nobody in the room is ever offended. And we ask, hey, look, we'll make whatever changes you want. It's not a problem. But since you guys like it so much, who are you thinking? And by the way, we're not talking about X-rated humor here. This is appropriate humor. Who are you thinking of? Almost, it is so rare that anyone can ever name anyone. There's just this vague general sense that there is this minority of people out there who might have been offended by something at some point in the past. But, so the assumption is that they'll be offended by everything. So I want to suggest something to you. I suggest that you be less concerned about a possibly fictitious vocal minority who somehow was born without a sense of humor, and be a lot more concerned that the entire rest of your audience is yawning. Because if they are yawning, you don't have their attention. And if you don't have their attention, then your communications isn't communicating anything. Make sense? Okay. Take a look at this. How many people here who have selected a life insurance plan and have to deal with that stuff? Life insurance? Anybody? Okay, a lot of people. Okay, great. So I'm going to read this to you. Beyond basic life, both individual and spouse buy-up options are available. An election of voluntary life coverage for a spouse can equal up to half your individual life buy-up, although depending on the desired level of coverage, EOI may be required. Again, how many people, life insurance people, have done that before? Raise your hands high. Raise your hands high. And how? No, come on, keep them up. Keep them up. And how many of you understand what that says? Okay, everybody. Okay, it's good. All right, now let's take a look at this one. Whoops. This is from the drug warning on my prescription Flonase. A drug interaction study in healthy subjects has shown that ritonavir, a highly potent cytochrome P453A4 inhibitor, can significantly increase plasmafluticasone propionate exposure, resulting in significantly reduced serum cortisol concentrations. Now, can I see the life insurance people again? And how many of you understood this? See, so you would understand this if you were an ENT. This would be very simple. So why is it that you could understand this? Is it because it's clear? Is it because it's understandable? It's because you're experts. That's why you understand it. And it's very, very difficult when you are an expert to sort of kind of see the forest from the trees, as it were. Like to identify the stuff that is so common for you and to understand what isn't for other people. But it's easy. Like even things like you get basic life insurance. Well, what's basic versus not basic, right? Like there's obvious stuff like EOI. Like what is that? Although it would go back and look at your own stuff and see if you're using EOI, and there's a pretty good chance that you are. So here's something. Sorry, this is a little bit cut off here, but here's something. Whoops. That not on the spur of the moment. The company is going to buy some life insurance for you. You can buy even more if you'd like. Whatever you buy for yourself, you can also purchase up to half that amount for your spouse. Now, depending on how much additional insurance you'd like, one or both of you may need to answer some questions about your health to see if you qualify for it. So, totally understandable. You read it once, you get what's going on. So now, how do you go from the previous text to this text? You know how you get there? You hire a writer. And I don't mean a writer, a technical writer. I don't mean somebody who's been doing a whole bunch of work for Employee Benefits News. I'm talking about a writer who might write, I don't know, stories or news articles for the general public who doesn't actually already understand your space, so that they necessarily are translating it into the language that your employees who also don't understand the space can understand. Here's the point. Communicate in plain English. Communicate in plain English. Okay. Looking at these two pieces here, so the one at the top was the original one, the one at the bottom was in English, and you'll notice that the one at the bottom is actually a little bit longer. The word count is 41 to 66. So normally, you want your communication to be shorter, not longer, because if you're trying to retain someone's engagement, then you have a better chance of doing that if the communication takes less time. But when we think of time, we think of, anybody? Albert Einstein, right? We think of Albert Einstein, And when we think of Albert Einstein, we think about the theory of relativity because he changed our understanding of time with the theory of relativity. So the theory of relativity is kind of complicated, and people from newspaper reporters would sometimes come to him and they'd ask him to explain the theory of relativity in a way that was understandable for their readers. And so he had this set quote that he would use when he was doing that. Now, before I show you the quote, I will caveat this and tell you that Einstein was living in a slightly less PC time. So I've taken the liberty of slightly editing his quote to be a little less sexist. But here is what he says about the theory of relativity. When you're on a date with someone totally hot, an hour seems like a minute. When your hand is on a hot stove, a minute seems like an hour. That's relativity. True. So I just make sure that you guys got that. Hand on a hot stove, a minute seems like an hour. Go out on a date with somebody totally hot, an hour seems like a minute. George Clooney is for the ladies.
Next slide.
Oh, as if you would not cross the double yellows for George Clooney. Because I would. Okay.
I don't think you would. Okay.
So so basically the idea is that the engagement is not measured in actual duration, it's measured in perceived duration. So how does this fit into the benefit space? So here's like a perfectly typical definition of a 401k plan. I'm not going to read it to you, but it's short, it's to the point, it's 2 paragraphs, you can read it in a minute. If you don't fall asleep while you're reading it. You start reading something and you read a sentence and then you read the same sentence again because your mind is wandering, you read it again, you're like, oh my God, I've read the same sentence 3 times, I better start paying attention again. Okay, so this is like very typical. Let me show you what Jellyvision does, that's my company, Jellyvision does in our benefits program to explain the same idea for how 401k works, but even more specifically, the really complicated piece of it, which is how pre-tax deductions work. Let's take a look. Oops.
Here's Bob.
Bob is not a real person. This is an example.
Yes, thank you, Howard. Anyway, this is all the money he earned last year. Bob doesn't have a 401k, so when the tax man shows up, hello, tax man, he collects taxes on all of Bob's money. Now, here is Sarah. She earned the same amount of money as Bob, but Sarah put some of her money into a 401k. Now, since Sarah put money into her 401k, it's as if the tax man can't see it. Because money in your 401k doesn't count as part of your earnings. So, when the tax man takes a cut, he gets less of Sarah's money. Here are Sarah's taxes. Here are Bob's taxes. Sarah wins because she stashed some of her money away in a 401k. So, are you ready to be a tax accountant now?
So that's so you can see it's longer. It's longer than reading it, but you don't fall asleep. So it seems like it's shorter because it's engaging. Okay, so here's the point: longer and engaging is better than shorter and boring. But short and engaging is best. Okay, so question for all of you: have any of you at any point seriously considered becoming a pipe fitter in your life? Anybody? Nobody? Really? Okay, well look, just in case you decide you might, there might be some point where you do become a pipe fitter. And if that's something that you might consider, I'd like to share this with you. Pipe fitting is the occupation of installing or repairing piping or tubing systems that convey liquid gas and occasionally solid materials. This work involves selecting and preparing pipe or tubing, joining it together by various means, and the location and repair of leaks. To learn more about becoming a pipe fitter, contact the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry of the USA and Canada. That was helpful, right?
It's sexy.
Is that helpful to anybody? Okay, so now let's say you're in a group meeting or a benefits meeting, all right? And here are some of the subjects that are coming up in the meeting. Maternity coverage, cost of prostate cancer screening, coverage for an MRI, how to collect short-term disability. Pretty good chance that at least some of these would come up in the group meeting, right? Maternity coverage almost certainly. Prostate cancer screening, pretty good chance of that. Somebody raises their hand, how much does an MRI cost? Somebody else raises how to collect short-term disability, and you're answering these questions while everybody else is sitting there listening to the answer that one person, question that one person asked. So here's my question for you. How many of you, show of hands please, how many of you, not as a benefits people, but as an individual employee, how many of you would need information on all four of these things? For everybody else who's not interested, you're providing this information that's about as interesting to them as becoming a pipe fitter was to you. And they're sitting in the meeting, wasting their time. Here's the point. Don't force employees to endure information they don't care about currently. Make sense? You got to find another, especially in a group meeting situation, when you're talking to a whole bunch of people at once, be thinking about people individually, not just the information that you've got to blast out to them. Okay, so quiz time. When communicating, it is most critical to summarize your key points clearly, keep explanations simple, utilize both audio and visual modalities, or all of the above. Who thinks A? B? B? C? D? All of the above. Okay. All right. But before I give you an answer on that, let's flip this around, because this is coming from the point of view of the speaker, the presenter. What if we turn it around and we look from the point of view of the audience, the person who's actually receiving the communication? And we ask the question this way. I am most engaged when I am listening to a summary of key points. Listening to a simple explanation. That's when I'm really riveted. Hearing and seeing at the same time. That's when I'm really tuned in. Or is it talking about my own situation, concerns, or ideas? Let's hear it. D. Why is it D? Because talking about, when you're talking about yourself, that's like the definition of being engaged, right? Like it's really, really hard to be disengaged when you're talking about big number one. Okay? So, looking at this question again, when communicating it is most critical, okay, this was obviously just a totally false question. The real answer to this is the most important thing to do is to listen. You want to be doing is listening, because your audience is engaged when they're talking about themselves, when they're expressing themselves. Listen. That's a big guideline for great communication. You know, whether it's a survey or you're passing out index cards and having people write down questions. So you go through it and kind of to the point of like not wanting to make people kind of sit through stuff that they're not interested in. If you see themes emerging and you know a whole bunch of people are interested, then it's like, okay, great. Saying, a lot of you seem to be concerned about X or have this question about Y. Even if you were going to present it anyway, the fact that you are saying, I'm looking at what you've told me, and I'm acknowledging it, to your point earlier, they're going to listen more. People listen more if they feel like you are listening to them. Let me show you this sort of fancy, high-tech way to listen. This is also another piece from something we do from our program at Jellyvision, which is called Alex, by the way. This is a section where we're interviewing people to understand a little more about them, to figure out what their possible medical insurance needs might be.
And for your child, how many visits to the primary care doctor should we expect? Got it. Now, thinking about your family altogether, how many specialist visits do you think you'll have this year? That's doctors you see for specific conditions, like an allergist, ear, nose, and throat doctor, a dermatologist, or if you get certain procedures, like an MRI or something similar. Got it. Moving on to happier topics. Is there a chance you'll be adding a new little member to your family next year? Chance of stork? 0. What about monthly prescriptions? How many different ongoing prescriptions does your family have? I'm talking about the number of different prescription drugs that someone in your family takes every day, all year long. 3.
Okay, so it gives you a little sense of it. So what's he doing there? And also, what all those ideas, so many of ideas are based in what? They're based in asking questions. Like, if you want to be a good listener, be a good question asker. And you can do it with individuals, but you can also do it with groups of people as well, and make them feel listened to. Ask questions. Here's the next question. Regarding medical benefits, do most of your employees most want to be educated on key insurance terms, deductible, copay, etc., pick the least expensive plan that will work for them, learn how to take advantage of free preventative care options, or D, compare drug and provider coverages between plans? What is it that most your employees mostly want to do? B. Duh. But you know what I mean? Like, but isn't it easy to forget that when you're putting all your benefits communications together? That like, this is what people really want? All right, so maybe it's not just medical plans. Let's pretend it's also maybe 401k. So let's look at 401k. Regarding 401k benefits, do most of your employees most want to, A, decide whether they should contribute and how much, B, learn how pre-tax dollars work, C, understand the implications of early withdrawal, or D, have $1 billion for their retirement? All right, we'll get the book cut out. D, obviously. Okay, what's the answer? A, right. Because that's what you'd want to do, right? Like, you know, this all stuff is sort of interesting, and when you're doing benefits communications, you're kind of like potentially getting a little lost in this stuff, because it seems very important, but really, as I said earlier, nobody's waking up really wanting to learn about this stuff. They want to kind of get to an answer. So let me show you how Jellyvision provides some help. This is also after the interview where we've asked a whole bunch of questions to learn about their possible medical needs. Then we go about trying to steer them towards a plan that might work for them. So this is what it looks like.
Thanks for sharing all that. Now I've got everything I need to show you which plan is most likely to be the best value given your medical needs. So, let's compare the cost of your plans. The first thing to look at is the premiums. Here's what comes out of your paycheck every 2 weeks. And let's graph that out for the whole year. Let's add in your estimated out-of-pocket costs. I'm talking about what you pay after your plan does its thing. Now, these are just estimates based on average costs for covered services. And I'm assuming that you'll stay in-network. But they should give you a rough idea of what you'll pay, premiums plus out-of-pocket expenses. For at least one of these plans, Wendigo puts money into a fund to help you pay out-of-pocket expenses. That's all factored in here. So far, this plan looks like the least expensive overall. You still with me? Okay. Now, I want to make sure you've got the whole picture here. Let's say you have a really tough year, medically speaking, big problems. Here is the total you'd possibly pay for each of these plans in that worst case scenario. Again, assuming you stay in-network and only use covered services. Now, as I note at the bottom, prescriptions aren't subject to this max for one plan. I can explain in more detail later on. Finally, given what you've told me, the plan that seems like it would make the most sense for you, all things considered, is this plan right here. But it's your call. Now from here, I can explain a plan, or you can update your estimates to see how it would affect the graph here. Or you can just go back to the menu.
I mean, to really actually get it, because at the end of the day, at the end of the year, they're going to either have more money in their pocket or they're going to have less money in their pocket. And of course, they don't know what the real medical, like what's going to really happen next year, what the future's going to hold for their medical needs. But to give them a sense of confidence that at least they're eliminating the ones that are probably really wrong for them. So one of the things that this does when you provide guidance in this city, this is, I think, particularly interesting if you're doing an HSA plan, if you're starting to do consumer-directed plans and you're going to have a big deductible, because people just look at that deductible and they're like, oh, God, well, $5,000. It's like, I can't afford that. And they don't look at the premium. And they're not looking at the premium in light of what their likely medical needs might be, which might be very little. So they could have a little premium and a little bit of medical needs, and the $5,000 deductible plan is home run, easily the best plan for them. But they won't see it. So it's about making it simple and helping them see that. Okay. So, provide guidance. You'll notice, like, we've gone through, like, you know, like a football field of lawyers to make sure that we're not, because, you know, you can't, like, tell somebody what to get. There is a way of doing it without telling someone what to get. And there is a way of doing it in print materials to help them and provide guidance in print materials that is not telling them what to get, but really providing guidance that will be meaningful and helpful to them. Okay, so I hope that this little discussion has helped make the point that benefits communication does not need to be a total snore fest, nor does it need to be confusing or annoying. Let us imagine that we are not in the benefits field anymore. We are a consumer products company, and we have a new dish soap that we are putting out to the market, because we are marketers now. And let me tell you a little bit about the product. People are telling us a little bit about the soap. It is golden colored like the sun. It leaves your hands feeling soft and supple. And it's 3 times faster at removing caked on food. So if you leave it overnight, you don't rinse it, it's 3 times faster getting that stuff off. So this is a little bit about the soap. Our job as marketers is to figure out what to name it. And we've got our high-priced consulting firm, and they've come up with 3 names for us to consider. And here are the 3 names. One is Sunspeed. Second is Golden Soft and Supple Triple Strength Dishwashing Liquid. Oh, you're laughing now. Or Yellow Soft 3X. So now, let's take a vote, okay? All in favor of Sunspeed, raise your hand. Hi, raise them high. Okay. Golden Soft and Supple Triple Strength Dishwashing Liquid? Nobody. Yellow Soft 3X. For the engineers in the group. Okay, thank you so much. You're an IT, aren't you? No, I'm just totally kidding. Okay, so most of us chose Sunspeed, even though Sunspeed is the least descriptive of these names, right? It's more evokes a feeling than really getting at what the feature list was. Okay, so now let's do a test. I'd like you to think of the names of your medical plans. How many of you have medical plans that have 4 or more words in the name? How many of you have medical plans with only 1 word? And yet, so many consumer products only have 1 word. So thinking about branding, thinking about that these are products that you are selling. I mean, you are selling them because, like, it's a benefit. You want them to feel beneficial. Don't worry so much about being perfectly descriptive. It's better to come up with simply a memorable name, because ultimately they're going to look at they're going to learn about whatever's in the product itself. And ideally, you set up products the way product goods companies do, which is they have a nice descriptive. I'm sorry, not a nice evocative name, a memorable name that's short. And in a couple of sentences, a couple of bullet points, they can understand like what the basic features are. So that's the idea. Treat your benefits like consumer products, short, memorable names, 2-point feature lists. This is a bonus guideline, basically. Normally, when you're describing a new idea term, you'll start off with the term itself, copay. You'll define it. A flat dollar amount you pay for receiving a medical service otherwise covered by an insurance policy. You might maybe get around to some examples. Jerry pays only $10 to visit his doctor when he has a cold. His insurance covers the rest. If you're good, really good, you'll provide a second one so they can start to see the pattern. Sally pays only $25 for an x-ray. Insurance covers the rest. So we almost always start off with the term, then provide the definition, and then we go to the examples. Okay, ready? Now, let's start off with a term that you haven't heard before. ascendanton. How many of you have any idea what ascendanton is? How many of you find that I'm starting off with this term ascendanton, is that helpful? So I'm like, we're going to talk about ascendanton. So far, nothing has happened in your brain. Nothing has happened. And if anything, you're going, actually, just for kicks, what is ascendanton? Just what do you think it might be?
A strange word. It's
Okay.
totally made up.
It's not a totally made up word, actually. Okay, so, what do you think? What does it mean? Just make it up. What do you think it means?
Not sure.
Anybody, who's got an idea?
Drug name.
What?
A drug name.
A drug name. I love that. Where do you see what it is? Anybody else got an idea of what ascendanton is? What do you think it is? Okay, you're bewildered. So the best you can hope for is bewilderment. It's also likely, though, if it sounds a little bit like something else, like a drug name, that you're already off in the wrong direction. Okay? So now, but that's okay. I'll clear everything up right away by giving you the definition. It is a figure of speech, the omission of conjunctions from constructions in which they would normally be used. Now you know what it is, right? You got put yourself in the minds of people where you're given these terms coinsurance or maximum out of pocket or whatever it is, and like they don't know what it is. And then when you define it, they may still not know what it is. So they're already still confused. Now let's get to the examples. I came, I saw, I conquered. Not I came, I saw, and I conquered. The and is taken out. Of the people, for the people, by the people. The and is omitted. Now we understand what ascendanton is. That's what ascendanton is. And you get it through the examples. So now let's turn it around. Let's start off with examples. New term. I can drive, got my wheels out front. Now it is very likely that the whole car is out front and not just the wheels. But we understand what the person's talking about when he says wheels. All hands on deck. Imagine what that might look like on a ship. Bunch of hands. Right? The sailors are probably out there with the hands. I'm looking to buy 50 head of cattle. You following what's going on here? Uh-oh, here come the suits. You're in a meeting, a bunch of suits walk in, without heads, bodies, and suits. Right, so we understand the executives are there in the suits. Okay, so here's the definition. A figure of speech in which a part is used to designate the whole. So now, tell me, this whole time, have you been following me? You've been tracking the whole time? So at this point, now that you know what it is, then I will put the term into place. The term is synecdoche. That's what the term is for that. So it's another literary term. So now we can, without having to describe it, we've got the benefit of actually a word that we can use to quickly remind us of this core idea. So it's just simply worth saying, actually this is not just benefits. Communications, this is almost always done wrong, is people teach the term instead of the idea. But when you think of us, when we're little kids, we're learning when we're like, we don't know what the word for this is, but we know it's something, oh, we figured out it contains something, it's water, I can pour it out. Then at some point later, it's like, this is a pitcher. That's the natural way that we actually learn. But somehow, when we're doing communications, we somehow turn it all around. So here's two statements before. In the event a participant is under the care of a network provider, at the time such provider stops participating in the network, for 6 months following that date, Wendigo will continue providing coverage for that provider services at the in-network benefit level. What are you talking about? And I got to read it again. But look what happens when I write a different way. This is not just speaking in plain English. Just watch what happens. If the doctor or other provider taking care of you drops out of the network, you will still pay in-network rates for that doctor for the next 6 months. Everything becomes clear when I'm talking about you instead of the benefits. And look, it's even shorter. What's the idea? Talk to you. Because it's not about the benefits, it's about your employees. It's just simply a better, right in the second person. Okay, here's the last little thing about personalizing. Does that look familiar? Okay, let's pretend you aren't interested in insurance. So you get this table and you're like robot shuts down. Right? You don't even want to look at it. Now, one of the problems though is you're munging all of this information all onto one page, and it's really sort of unnecessary because you can, well, especially if this is electronic, but even if it's paper, why not print out different grids for different groups of people so you can only show them the stuff that they might be interested in. So here's what it can look like if it's just for families. Look at how much more pleasant that is. And there's a few other things that I've done here as well. Like, so the premiums are in round dollar amounts. Just round your premiums out. Like, it doesn't matter, 45 cents, you don't need to put that. Like, change it to 99 or 98. Take one, literally because the communication will be simpler. And then look at the way it's also worded here on the sides. Premium, deductible, coinsurance, copay, you know, all this other stuff. Premium, deductible, you need no deductible. In network, you typically pay 20%, $10 to $20 per visit, 10%. Maximum out of pocket. I mean, it's like, it's nice and simple. And notice, I've actually cut out some of the categories because these are the ones that everybody cares about. And then you can add down at the bottom the stuff that some people care about. It's sort of like, here, focus up here, don't become overwhelmed. And if you need more detail, there's more detail down here. But it's really, this is like, first and foremost about saying, you were talking about your different groups, right? You got like one audience over here. I'm suggesting like, go even more micro than that. So you've got this group, and the families in that group versus the individuals versus the individual spouse plus, you know, spouse plus one, so that you can keep these grids simple. Another thing, variation on this in terms of personalization, and this might be helpful for, I think it was what you were talking about earlier, is having micro sessions rather than one big macro session. So maybe you have like a general information session, but then if you could have like small sessions that are covering individual topics. So at 11 o'clock, come into the I'm having a baby session, or the I've got kids at home session, or I never go to the doctor session for the 25-year-olds that you can't convince to do the 401k. I'm concerned about meds. So, and also notice that these are all written, again, sort of like, these are written in a first-person point of view. So it's really easy for you to see like what it is that you might be interested in, and it's already alluring just doing it this way. Thank you again.